Thank you, Tim, for allowing this. One of my first questions is, what first interested you about our value homes?
Probably the first thing that really interested me, well, you built a friend of mine's house or a former coworker's house that really impressed me.
Oh, yeah.
So that was probably what initially made me look into you. And after that, the more I looked, the more I liked. And then having you come out and walk lots here with me, I was pretty sold on going with our value from those initial contacts.
Okay. Now, the interesting thing about that one is the house you're referring to happened because they came to an open house I had on a previous home.
Ah.
So we need to keep that going.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, what was the ultimate reason then that you chose our value over other options?
I think our values aligned on building houses, and I think in this area you don't find a lot of builders that specialize in doing high performance homes, and that was one of the things that was really important to me with this build was to try and build a low maintenance house that was as efficient as possible. So hopefully it can be a century house. And you not only would talk about it, but you seem to have done it, and you had a lot of knowledge. So
Okay.
that's what ultimately made me decide and keep
Okay.
working with you.
Good. Early on, I guess at the stage that we were walking the lot and so on, did you have a clear understanding of what the next step was going to be? How did we do at communicating that to you?
Yeah, I mean, if you remember right, we actually walked a different lot like 2 or 3 years
Long
before
time
I
ago.
even bought this lot, and I was real impressed with that, but it just didn't work out for me at that time with my finances and family things that were going on. But you're always in the back of my mind. If I wanted to build a house, you're probably the guy I'm going to talk with. Um, but yeah, once I had purchased this one and then we had done a walkthrough on here and we talked a little bit more, the big thing that made me connect with it was, again, you seemed, you knew how to build high performance homes. You did excellent job communicating and understanding, my budget and my needs and what I'm looking at and helping to keep me at the right place to meet budget. And one of the big things I really appreciate about this build is the fact I love the house, but also we were on budget.
Nice. Thank you. That's a big deal to me
That
because too many get lost from the budget getting out of control. Yeah.
Right. And you worked really well with that because we went from initial or rough quote without really
Hmm.
knowing too much to an actual quote to, oh my God, we're way over budget. To, okay, here are things we can do. Here are some steps we can take, and we could keep the things that were important and we could, trim at these places. And we got it down to a place where I could afford to do the build. And then the build came on budget too. And that's huge from people that I know that have built houses where that is often not the case.
Yep.
So,
Good. Okay. What was difficult or frustrating about the pre-construction process?
probably some of the biggest ones for me just were all budget related again, where it's
Okay.
like, we had originally talked one number and then it's like, whoa, these numbers are coming in way different. And COVID had happened, sort of between the time or just during it. And, I understand escalating costs, but, that was frustrating, but that was, something we worked through. One of the things again that I appreciated was you went through what I believe was 12 different exterior wall
It may have
constructions.
even been more. Yeah.
Yeah, and with a breakdown, and we were really able to hone and choose, for the performance we were looking for, the most cost-effective solution.
Yeah.
And you were flexible with that, which was huge,
Yeah.
and helped get me down to where I needed to be, frankly, in my budget.
It is a bit of a roller coaster, up and down when the budget numbers start to come in. I think when my home got designed and built, we went through 4 different floor plans before we finally got to one we could uh, enjoy and afford.
Yep, I because I know I had expanded this floor plan and then we contracted it back in again. Basically, I think to basically where it was, at
At the
least for
beginning.
total square footage at the beginning. Yeah,
Yeah.
after think, oh no, I'll bump a wall out here and I'll do this and that, and then, but it's all about compromise to get where you need to be for the dollars,
Yep.
is what I think.
Yep. Right. So you chose to work with an interior designer on this home.
Hmm.
Some people have an idea that they don't need one. What would you say to that?
It depends. I thought my interior designer did a good job for me. And she's somebody I had worked with before on a remodel project, and so we understood each other. I wasn't going in blind. She was very affordable. Uh, Considering interior design work tends to be rather expensive. But we had a similar vision. She understood me, and I knew that she was very budget conscious. So I recommend it because it helped me make decisions for things I'm not good at.
Okay.
I'm pretty good with space and shape. I'm terrible with texture and color. And, I can choose something that looks nice and then this other thing that looks nice, and you put them together. It's
Yeah.
like ketchup and ice
Right.
cream,
Yep.
and she helped keep me away from that at a really affordable price because she was a by the hour person.
Okay.
So, and I did leverage her later for doing furniture choices in the living
Oh
room
yeah.
that we're sitting in. Um, and I think she's done a good job at a reasonable price, but it all depends on what you're looking for.
Well, from my perspective, it makes the pre-construction go really smoothly because I get a list of everything that's going to be
Hmm.
done, and there's very little changes that ever happen to it because she has done the work of making sure everything coordinates.
Yep.
So that is very nice. So one of the things that's a bit unique about working with us is that you get a very detailed scope of work and specifications for the project. In fact, that's a lot of what our pre-construction is writing
Hmm.
that. Was that helpful to you, or would you say that's mostly helpful to the build team, or is it some of both?
Oh, for me, it was really helpful. As a matter of fact, at times I would have said, "Oh," because I know I sent you a lot of messages on co-construct, going, "Well, what about this?" And like, "Well, we handle that later down the path." It's like, "Oh, okay, I thought this was a complete document."
Hmm.
It's not. It's evolutionary, like everything else is. But having that level of detail, I think, was absolutely great for me because I think you even told me I was a highly involved
Yes.
customer,
Yeah.
where I like the building science and, I nerd out on that stuff. I'm not good with picking paint colors and things like that, but structure and systems, I really am interested in. So I loved it.
Yeah, I think you went through the whole document instead of just over a course of a few days.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever done that before.
Oh.
So that was really awesome. It got things moving well. Okay. So I asked for one glow and one grow. And so what I mean is one thing I personally did well for you and one thing that I could personally improve on.
Well, did well. I can get lots of things. The biggest thing is I think you exceeded at helping stay on budget. Through pre-construction and understanding, okay, here's something that we can cut without compromising the building structure. It's like you can get rid of the tile work, because that's just as cost effective to add later as it is to do at build. Whereas you can't change your insulation, you can't change your windows, there's lots of things you can't change. And it tends to be the things nobody sees. So realtors and
Yep.
people like that don't care about them.
Yeah.
But those were what was important to me, and I know it's important to you too. So that's a big plus. Is helping me get on budget for that and knowing where you can cut and where you can't cut. Um, I don't really have too many grow ups. Probably my biggest one would be that I know I had asked you a couple of times about doing an ERV instead of the HRV. And I know you've come around on that now too, if I recall
Yeah,
correctly.
it's true.
But
Yep.
I do kind of regret not having that, but we'll see. I
Okay.
haven't been in here a year. I haven't gone through the seasonal cycles, but
Sure. So the ERV doesn't remove as much humidity from the air. So right
mhm,
now your interior humidity is at 32%. Maybe you'd be at 40, which is a more comfortable level
right.
if you had a ERV. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but I guess, that's the only one I can really think of, and that's minor at
Okay.
nothing because I think the costs for an ERV and an HRV are about the
They
same
are.
thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
but I already have everything installed. I'm not going to mess with it.
Well, good. Okay. Thank you. During the construction stage, Harold takes over the project management,
Mhm.
kind of the day-to-day communication and so on. How would you rate our communication during that portion of the project?
Oh, it was excellent. Harold, anytime he had a question, he texted me, and we were back and forth constantly throughout the entire construction process. He was available. He answered questions because I would come out here fairly often, at least twice a week, to keep my eye on the build. And if I had questions, he was back with me within the hour, 2 hours
Okay,
tops. And
nice.
the other direction too, because if he had a question on site from a sub or from what he saw, he would get with me, and I, generally speaking, would respond pretty quickly too, I think. So he did excellent.
Okay, so on that, one of the things that we try to do during pre-construction and writing the detailed specs is to eliminate having to ask you questions
Mm-hmm.
on site. So was that, did you ever feel like if I don't get back with him, everything's going to go awry?
No, I never
Okay,
felt that.
okay,
It was just one of those. He knew that I was a high touch customer. That it's like I wanted to be involved. I
okay,
wanted to know what's going on.
got it.
So for me, it was all on the positive side. I never felt like anything was out of control. And he pointed out things where it's like, hey, here's something you might want to think about a little bit. We have a week or so to figure it out, but this could be a potential issue, or we could save some money here, or we could, do this or that differently.
Okay,
And that was all super, super helpful because nobody just went and did something.
got it. Nice. Okay, now's the time to give Harold one glow and one grow.
Let's see. Harold, I mean, he managed this project, I think, really, really well. There were things. I think we had one change order,
Yeah,
or
and it was
a
really
half
early.
change
Yeah,
order
really
almost.
early on. It was kind of a, hey, I think we have a little bit more money. Can we add this back
Right.
in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kept those down, and that was really helpful. But I know there were some things that weren't in the specification. One of them being that raised trade ceiling in the entranceway.
Yep.
But we kind of didn't have a lot detailed for it. It was one of those we're going to figure it out when we're there kind of things. And Harold did a great job of going, oh, hey, here's a way we could do this, because you get a little ceiling variation. It opens up the space and kind of defines the space,
Mm-hmm.
and it won't cost you anything.
Yep.
I'm like, whoa, this sounds like a great idea. So we did that, and it all fell within the plan and where the timelines were going, that it wasn't any additional cost. Nobody had to come back and do anything.
Yep.
So that kind of thing he did multiple times, but that's probably the one that sticks out for me the most because I walk
see
in
it all
through
the
that
time.
door every day and
Yeah.
I go, that was a good decision.
Nice.
I'm trying to think. Okay, one thing, and this may key into something you want to ask later, is the door placement into the master suite.
Okay.
I didn't catch it. He didn't catch it. And that's probably one of the biggest bugaboos in the house that I have.
I don't think I've heard about this, so tell me a little bit more.
It's the swing on the door. I mean, one of those things you don't think about much when you're in the middle of it. And the door is, because I'm doing 36-inch doors for ADA compliance, the swing on it actually now closes off about this much of my bathroom entrance. And if the swing had been the other way, no big deal. And because I never close that door, so it's always blocking a little bit of the bathroom entrance. It's like one of those,
oh yeah,
if only I had done the swing the other way.
That would frustrate me.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
That's on the change it later punch list, because you have to move a light socket to the other side. It's one of those compounded error things. And nobody caught it. I didn't. Harold didn't. I'm just surprised nobody said, hey, this could be an issue.
Yeah.
Till it was done. So that's my one thing I can think of.
Okay. All right, we'll take it. Now that the home is finished, how did it perform in the recent cold snap?
Flawlessly. It was warm in the house. I keep my temperature at 68 degrees, so I'm not super hot running, but I'm not super cold either. It was consistent throughout the cold snap. I could sit on my windowsill, didn't feel a chill from the window, so
nice.
I haven't gotten my electric bill yet from it, because I am an all-electric house, but
to those who are concerned that a mini split or air-to-air heat pump can't keep up in Michigan winters, we had what, 5 days in the single digits?
Yeah.
And below zero.
Yeah, and
yeah,
some wind in there too, and we're close to the lakes. The wind matters here.
yeah.
But yeah, the house was flawless for that.
Okay, good. What are your thoughts now that you've lived with a concrete floor for a couple of months?
I have no problem. I really like it, actually. Now, admittedly, it's gotten me in the habit of, wearing house shoes,
Yeah,
which
I do the same.
I should be doing anyway. I mean, it's one of those that keeps everything cleaner, blah, blah, blah. But no, I don't mind the floor at all. And I think it's really easy to clean. The maintenance has been great. And it was a good cost savings that allowed me to invest it in other areas that were more important to me.
Yep.
Also, I guess a sideline for that, and this is more for people watching, it's fairly simple to put flooring on top of this.
Yeah.
If I find that I don't like it.
Yep.
So that was another thing that
Absolutely.
we had talked about, where it's like, you can change this later if it doesn't, and it's not going to cost you any more technically. So you
Yep.
can invest the money for your mortgage that you're buying somewhere else. So
Right on. Compared to your previous home, how would you describe what it feels like to live in this home?
I liked my previous home. I love this home. So, but then again, I designed and built, with you this house. So it's like kind of meets my needs for what I want. My last house, twice as big, twice as much maintenance and cleaning and everything else, and way too much space. Whereas this is built for my needs.
Okay.
So, and it's way more comfortable as far as a way is maybe not too much. My former house was very well constructed. So
Yeah,
I
it was
didn't really
pretty new
have,
too, right?
yeah, I didn't have cold spots or anything, So, but this is just as comfortable in half the space, and the windows are much tighter. The doors don't leak as much. So,
Okay. Good. One of the things that we figured out that we could do after construction started was get you a zero energy ready home certification. There was some cost to that. If I recall right, somewhere in the $4,000 to $5,000 range, half of that being paperwork and additional testing, and half of it being some specification upgrades, because we're most of the way there already.
Yeah. We were probably 95% of the way there. I think
Yeah.
the only upgrades I had to do, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut your question off.
Talk about it.
The only upgrades we needed to do from our specifications, which you did not consider change orders, so thank you, was on my toilets. I had to change my toilets to a WaterSense certified toilets. And the other thing I had to do is I needed to change my range hood vent to one that was certified for
Energy Star.
Yep. I think those were the only changes required to get me to net zero ready, which opened up a $10,000 check from Consumers Energy, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah. So, upgrading, the upgrades were probably, a couple thousand dollars more in testing. And then the rest, was money for me, and it helped actually to pay for an overage that we had for the water under foundation, under slab, yes, water management.
Yep.
So I still ended up at the end of the build. You sent me a check as opposed to me sending you a check, which was
kind of nice.
Kind of nice for me, and probably not something that's happened often to you.
Yeah. Yep. So that was a step you would do again then?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think having that certification probably, I don't plan on selling, but my guess is that is something that you can definitely market for resale too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. I think it's going to be getting bigger and bigger.
Okay.
Looking at the big picture then. Overall, would you say the process of getting a home designed, priced, and built was a lot of work? Was it kind of fun, or somewhere in the middle?
It was in the middle. It's a lot of work, because, it's the biggest amount of money I've ever spent in my life is this. So it's stressful in that sense, but having a really good partner, I think that, understands building an efficient house really helps. And you guys, I'm really thankful that I found you guys to help me do that.
Oh, we are too.
So it wasn't horribly stressful. It all came together, and compared to everybody I've talked with that has built houses, my experience is not the general experience from people I know. But they also didn't work with you guys. So
Sure. Okay. How in control of the process did you feel?
very in control.
Okay.
You know, but we had a shared vision as far as building the house, and as far as, we had a good understanding of, I have a budget that I have to stand to. I can't afford huge overages. So
Yep. And then how in control of the process did you feel our team was?
very much so. I thought
Good.
Harold was always on top of it. I don't think anything snuck up on him that I am aware of at all.
Not normally. No, he is pretty on top of things, that's for sure. Okay. Was there anything that surprised you, either good or bad, during the whole thing?
Pre-construction, there were some surprises just because numbers were different than what I was thinking, which I know is not uncommon. But you work through those. Outside of that, no, there weren't any major surprises that I can think of.
Good. That's what we're going for.
Right. Because I'm like, I mean, we hit the water table when we did the foundation. That was unexpected, but that kind of thing happens, and it was managed well. And, I don't have any concerns about it. It ate up a fair amount of my overages, but it was the right solution for a long-term fix. So.
Okay. Did we deliver on our promises to you?
Absolutely.
Would you do it again?
If I had the money.
No, I didn't mean we should do another one, but that would be fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I'd do it. I don't see myself wanting a different house.
No, I meant if you could go back in time.
Oh, I'd change the door.
The right decision?
I mean, yes, there are some minor things. If I had a bigger budget, are there some things I would have changed? Yeah, there are, some things I would add, or I actually plan on adding.
Yep.
But like the structure of the house, the performance of the house, I wouldn't change any of that. I love my location. You don't control that at all, but it's just one of those. And I don't say, oh gosh, I wish I had 300 square feet more. I have no regrets for any of that. I don't see me needing any more than what I have.
Nice. Even though we framed that opening out to put a sunroom on.
Well, a sunroom, or don't forget, I was thinking potential ADU out there. Now, it doesn't mean I won't add one of those out there.
Okay.
Because my daughter can live here with her family eventually, and she can kick me out to that.
Okay. Good. All right. I think that's the last of the questions I have. Anything else you want to mention?
I can't think of anything.
Okay.
It's been a beautiful house.
Well, thanks, Tim. Appreciate your time today. Appreciate you trusting us to build this home. It was fun.
Yeah.
It is fun to take some of the lessons I learned on past houses and improve it on the next one. So, you get better systems, better materials, because I made the mistakes on my house, or figured out new stuff on other homes.
Right.
So,
well, I was the first house you did thermaltite on, and now
right.
I understand you're using that on at least one more?
One more. Yeah. Yep. And there's some in design that might end up going that way. Yeah.